Well, hi everybody. Meteorologist Joe Chaffee and meteorologist Joe Rayo on the Joe and Joe Weather Show on this Friday night. After a day, at least away from the coast, it got very warm, very soupy, and very juicy, and that has triggered off some severe weather. And we're going to take you through it this evening. We're going to take a look at the weekend next week, and believe it or not, there is a chance that we could have our third named storm in the Atlantic this weekend. It's out in the ocean. We'll take a look at it, but Joe, it would be incredibly just briefly, that's when we get to the severe weather. Just remarkable if we wind up getting a third named storm in the month of May.
Is it possible that we can do that? Because May only has another day or so to run.
Well, the Hurricane Center folks have it on the outlook, and they got a 50% chance in the next 48 hours of it
That would be,
developing into a subtropical depression or a subtropical storm.
and that would be a first, wouldn't it? No, we've
I
never,
don't think there's ever been three in the month of May. That would be just that would be incredible. But
even in 2005, where we ran out of names, we didn't have three in May.
when we get to later on, we'll pull up the 2005 year and take a look at what happened that year in terms of the timing when the storms came along. But let's go to tonight's thunderstorms because they are raging, and in some places, not in others. It really kind of depends where you are, and we're going to start. I'm going to start with the local radars, Joe. It looks like there is a cell pretty close to you. You just bring it
Right?
up on the full screen here.
It's dark out this way. We've had some, you know, occasional shower activity, but nothing really dramatic. But we've been watching this one broad area just off to our north and west, so that certainly is going to cause some problems if it does move on through.
Yeah,
Eh,
the storms were very strong. If you saw that opening frame there before I refreshed it and updated, those storms were very strong when they were running from Lancaster up to about Scranton, and there were a few severe thunderstorm warnings that came out. The line looks like it's weakened to some extent. There's a big cell east of Lancaster, not too far from York, Pennsylvania. Oh no, I'm sorry. York is to the west. I'm sorry. East of Lancaster, probably getting close to Reading, but not quite to Philadelphia. And the way those storms are sliding up to the northeast, they're going to wind up starting. They're going to start weakening now after with the daytime heating getting cut off. There's a rather strong cell, Joe, that's sitting up not too far from you. I've got the Upton radar there right now, and looks like it just passed. There's a cell moving between Peekskill and Poughkeepsie, and there's another big cell sitting right over Middletown, and some stronger cells in northwest Jersey, moving out of Sussex County. Looks like they're now moving into parts of Passaic County, but it's sliding more north northeast than it is east. So when those reach the coast, they're going to fall apart.
and the one thing I can also tell you, Joe, in spite of the fact that we see these blotches of angry red not too far from where I am, I have yet to see any lightning or hear any thunder. So maybe this activity is literally weakening by the minute as it runs into that maritime wall, like just off to the east of where I am.
Right.
So suddenly winds blowing and thunderstorm. But again, my friend Pete Bergman, who lives out on eastern Long Island, not too far from you, said I can't see this happening for us in terms of severe weather. It's only like 62 degrees where I am.
I know. Take a look. Take a look. I got the the 7 o'clock obs. So it's 63 at Gabrisky Airport in West Hampton, and in Farmingdale it's 67. And the winds are pretty much from the south, coming in off the water. And I'm up on the North Shore, east of Port Jeff, and that south wind is actually gusting at times between 20 and 25 miles an hour. Now, these temperatures to the west have all been impacted by the thunderstorm. So you're seeing a lot of these numbers that are down into the 60s. But I'm going to bring up, I happened to save this at noontime today. I saved the surface map, and just going to show you just how juicy this air was. So just give me a moment here while I switch sources.
At about 2 or 3 o'clock this afternoon, it was 82 at Newburgh, dew point 70. So I said, well, if we ever wanted to prime the atmosphere for an outbreak of storms, this is certainly just the right type of condition that the storms would love to propagate in.
Oh, look at these numbers. This was at noontime today. When I saw this, I thought, you know what? These some of these storms are going to get strong. 81 dew point. I'm not sure what station that is in the northeastern part of New Jersey. 81 dew point 72.
It,
Another one in Somerset, probably Somerset, 79-71. Sussex, 79-71. In Pennsylvania, you had a whole bunch of stations with temperatures in the middle 80s and dew points in the upper 60s to around 70. You don't see that too often this time of year.
no,
And the other spot where it was pretty interesting today was further north. I also saved upstate New York and into New England, where you've had some also very juicy temperatures, upper 70s and low 80s, dew points in the upper 60s and low 70s, clear across upstate New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, and even in Maine. You had temperatures where they were in the low 80s. I'm not sure what the station is in southwest Maine inland. It's the dew point at noontime, 84 temperature, dew point of 70, and south and east of that, 82 dew point of 70. I mean, these were really remarkable numbers from the standpoint of temperatures, in my never to be humble opinion.
well, not so much temperature. I think the
The
humidity,
temperature dew point. I'm sorry, that's what I
yeah,
meant.
humidity is just sky high for this time of the year. And yet, Joe, in contrast, in 48 hours, we're going to see an incredibly low dew point scale. Some of the models were suggesting that we would see dew points up here in the lower Hudson Valley, at least, and even into New York City, somewhere in the 32 to 37 degree range. Dew points in the 30s. Can you believe
Yeah,
that?
that's crazy.
Yeah.
By the way, quick welcome to those of you who are watching from Facebook or from Twitter or from the Meteorologist Joe Chaffee weather app. We are live right now if you are watching. So I just pulled up the Boston radar, and the showers and storms are not quite in range from there. Albany's radar, there are some wicked cells up in northeastern New York. We've got three working severe thunderstorm warnings as of 7:08. There's a big cluster of storms between Glens Falls, Glens Falls and Albany. I'm sorry,
Right.
and another strong cell southeast of Cobleskill, and they're all moving to the northeast. And also, in the not too far from you, looks like there's some fairly strong cells on the way toward Poughkeepsie. The Storm Prediction Center's watch box, the way they drew it, was actually pretty pretty darn close to what happened in reality uh, with these storms. I want to just go down a little bit further to the south. I actually first, which radar did I just bring up? This is Binghamton's radar view, and we're seeing some fierce storms now in Elmira, Ithaca, on up. To just east of Syracuse, moving to the northeast. A few stronger cells around Williamsport, southwest of State College. Also, a few strong cells to the northwest of there. Let's go to, speaking of State College, let's go to their radar. And here's the view. This is a second batch that's behind the lead storms. And there are a lot of strong cells now working their way across southwest and central Pennsylvania, moving to the east. And headed southeast, there's Mount Holly's view. You see the tail end of this line. And one jump further to the south, let's go down to Dover radar. And there's just some patchy shower activity down in parts of Maryland, down in southeast Virginia, and over the Delmarva Peninsula, and a few showers right now going on in southern New Jersey. But there's nothing really too convective with that stuff. There's a big gap, and then you've got the thunderstorms that are out to the west. So not too shabby. It wound up, I kind of I kind of downplayed it a little bit a couple of days ago. I didn't think that this was going to be too big a deal, but when I saw those juiced up numbers this morning on the dew points, yeah, I kind of knew that this was going to be a little rougher than originally advertised.
And that second round, there's actually two cold fronts, and that second round of moisture off to the west. That's what the trailing or second front, excuse me. And once that gets on by, I think once we get past midnight or 2 a.m., we'll pretty well be done with any kind of precipitation. I really don't think we're going to have to worry about people waking up tomorrow morning to some lingering shower or storm activity. It looks like now it's going to be I think fairly dry
Yeah,
for
they should be at it. They should be long gone by the time we get to daybreak. This was how SPC drew their risk areas today. They expanded it this morning. The large area of slight risk, and again, look where the eastern edge of the eastern flank of the slight risk of the severe weather, how well it lined up with the radar tonight, and the close-up view of the severe thunderstorm watch that's still up. There's also another watch up for northeastern New York and into Vermont, and so there's two working severe thunderstorm watches at the moment. The the eastern edge of that into the three western counties of New Jersey, Hunterdon, Warren, and Sussex County on the edge to Orange and Dutchess, and that's kind of how the storms are playing out because east of there, as you pointed out, that's where you have the marine layer, and that marine layer also extends into southern New England. So I'm thinking that these storms are probably at their peak now and should start to tail off in the next several hours.
right. And yeah, once we get further along into the evening hours, diurnal cooling, if you will, the atmosphere cooling down, combined with the movement of those storms running into that maritime air, pretty well will diminish and then finally put all of those cells of precipitation to an end. So I don't think now the interesting thing about tomorrow is later in the day tomorrow. There's some kind of is it an upper trough or
It's the
another
upper trough coming through. The first cold front just kind of lingers right along the coast. There's not much with it. It's just waiting for the upper trough to come along and just nudge it out to the east, and that brings in the cooler air. Originally I had. By the way, everybody's looking at the. I've got a wide northeast mid-Atlantic view up of the radar right now, and you can see that this is running a little bit behind the radars that we just showed you, which are only about 5 minutes behind. This is more like 15 or 20 minutes behind. But you can see the lead line, the second line, the trailing showers and storms back through Ohio and parts of West Virginia. And we've also got some showers and storms in the southeast and down into northern Florida. I did not, originally I thought maybe with that upper trough you could always get an isolated shower or, an isolated pop-up storm. I'm wondering whether it's everything that's going on tonight just basically zaps everything out of the atmosphere, and you're just not going to have a whole lot for that upper trough to work on. I mean, that's kind of my guess on that.
well, there may be some buildup, some cumulus buildup, maybe later in the day tomorrow. And if there's just enough moisture, you might in one or two spots squeeze out maybe a brief shower. I don't expect anything convective in the sense of thunderstorms, but there might be a shower or two, renegade shower or two late tomorrow with that upper trough. Otherwise, it should be dry after we get the last of these showers out of here after midnight tonight, right on through the rest of your weekend. And like I said, Sunday is going to be an atypical day. I could see, Joe, with temperatures in the high 60s to near 70 and dew points well down in the 30s. I could see relative humidities by Sunday afternoon somewhere between 20 and 25%, which is certainly a lot different than what's going on out there right now.
Bone dry. So I got the latest run of the HRRR, which by the way is not doing a good job with the batch of storms that's back out to the west. Seems to be a little bit underdeveloped, and also the lead line, because I have the map up for 7 o'clock. Let me see if that's the latest one. No, let me just jump to 22Z. Okay, so we got the latest HRRR because this comes out every hour. But even this one, the HRRR seems to be underdoing the cells out to the west in Pennsylvania, and also very slow. The reality is much faster than what the HRRR shows, and it does bring that next those lines through to the east, and then just weakens them. There are some scattered cells running around. This is at midnight tonight, between midnight and 1 a.m. You can see around the northern New Jersey, lower Hudson Valley, Connecticut, Long Island. You see some scattered showers and maybe one or two small leftover thunderstorms that just kind of move along. And then tomorrow morning, the cold front. If you look at the isobars, Joe, um, your cold you have your cold front is, I just drew it. Basically goes from Boston to eastern Long Island to just east of Cape May to southern Delmarva. But there's another kink with the upper trough, and that's out to the west. It's a little hard to find, but the upper trough is kind of back out in western New York, and we'll have to wait for that to come through to bring in the cooler air, and the dew points are going to plunge after that that dry line, let's call it a dry line, moves on through tomorrow later in the afternoon.
Right. And the real cool stuff probably begins to will hold off until late tomorrow night, and then we'll be fully into it when we get to Sunday and on into the start of next week on Monday. I've got temperatures on Sunday night and even on Monday night here in the Hudson Valley in the upper 40s, and that's pretty cool when you greet the new month of June, and again with the very low dew point temperatures as well. So. Um, who knows? The summer, the upcoming summer for us may be hot or humid or sticky or whatever, but at least it's, in terms of kicking off the month of June, it's going to get off to a nice, cool, and refreshing start.
Yeah, I just pulled up the Weather Service digital forecast for Monday morning. Islip 48, White Plains 49, Poughkeepsie 43, 40. I don't know what station that point is up in Passaic, Western Passaic, 42. So low and mid 40s, so in many inland spots, and upper 40s to around 50 at the warmer urban locations and some of the warmer coastal areas. So this is a fairly uh, decent shot of cool air. And then I'm just putting up here Monday night into Tuesday morning. It's mostly mid 40s and low 50s for Monday night and Tuesday morning. And if you just want to, for Saturday night, Sunday morning, we're looking at lows that are going to be mostly in the low to mid 50s. So the real push of cool air comes in Sunday into Monday. Now,
A comfortable few sleeping nights coming up starting tomorrow night. I don't think it's going to be comfortable tonight. I think we're still going to have a bit of humidity to deal with, but after tonight, it should be a-okay for a while.
I got the satellite loop up, and I'll bring up. I'll bring up the Atlantic view so that we can see this. Just on the middle right, okay, not down on the lower right, but just above that. If you go up a little bit above that, you can see a little the western edge of clouds turning in a counterclockwise fashion. That's what the Hurricane Center is looking at as far as the possibility of something tropical or subtropical developing. Meanwhile, you can see the clouds in the east and the blow up tops with the thunderstorms across the northeast as that front pushes through. And all the dry air that is now moving into through the northern and central plains, down into northern Texas and Arkansas. So that's our high that is going to be coming eastward. You got a lot of moisture down in the western Gulf and southward into the Yucatan Peninsula and the Northwest Caribbean. Nothing's going to come of that for the time being. We'll focus on that when we get there. So here's your surface map tonight. They only have, by the way, they have a trough, Joe, drawn in through central Pennsylvania. The main cold front is back western shores of Lake Ontario, across Lake Erie and North Erie, northwest PA, and then cuts down through Ohio on a diagonal that goes all the way down into northern Mississippi, and then it starts to become stationary as it goes to the west. But you're looking at temperatures today across the Great Lakes and upper Midwest that were mostly for highs, at least at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Low to mid 60s, a few places maybe not getting out of the 50s. Closer to the front, you saw upper 60s and low 70s, but yeah, those dew points are low. They're down in the 40s in many locations. So that's what we have to look forward to when we get to Sunday.
William Huber mentions on the chat board here, he says, Joe R., I guess red flag warnings will be going up for forest fires this Sunday till next Tuesday. I'm not sure. It certainly is going to be breezy with gusts to over 20 miles an hour, I think, on Sunday. But after that, there doesn't really look like to be any kind of really strong winds, although it is going to be still relatively mild and certainly very dry. But he does bring up a good point. For Sunday, we may very well see is that possible for the first time this season? Red flag warnings in our
It's
area?
possible. You know what, Joe? It's been dry all week for the most part.
Yeah,
Um, Even though some places had some scattered showers yesterday, they didn't amount to much. These thunderstorms are really not going to amount to much in terms of rain. So, and there'll be areas here that won't see a drop out of this. So, if it's dry all day tomorrow, maybe Sunday you will see some red flag warnings going up.
it's possible. It's possible.
It's possible, possible, possible. All
I
right,
bet you
so
don't even remember what cartoon character used to say that. You have to go way back, like you and I.
yeah.
It's possible.
Oh God.
Muskie from Deputy Dog.
Dog. All
Not
right. You remember. I wouldn't have remembered that.
all right.
All right. So carrying it along on the surface map. Uh, so we'll see improving weather conditions. There are a couple of showers in upstate New York tomorrow afternoon. The GFS picks up on that. If
Right.
you want to throw in the chance that there's a brief shower somewhere, I wouldn't argue it with you. And then the high takes over. Sunday looks good. Monday looks good. And now the next round of weather systems starts to move our way. It looks like some kind of warm front here by Tuesday morning, Joe, and it's been faster on every run. By Tuesday morning, the GFS now has showers across in eastern Pennsylvania into southeast New York as a high moves off the North Carolina coast. I mean, that looks like some kind of warm front that goes through. And then you've got westerly isobars heading into Wednesday. There's another uh, little system that comes through Tuesday night with some showers and storms. And then yet another one that comes through on Thursday with some showers and storms. It's just these very small, fast-moving systems coming. Look, if you watch the loop, if I'll move this along, just keep your eye on central Canada. It's one, two, three of them that move southeastward over the course of this week. So now you wonder whether, I thought this week was probably going to be relatively uneventful, even with the two weather systems coming along with some time in between. Now it looks like, now when you look at this, you should start to wonder that you got these short waves running around in the flow. And after that, just to kind of give it a quick look here for next weekend, doesn't look too shabby here with weak high pressure off the southeast coast and more of a southwest or west wind in play. So uh, probably be a typical early June weekend. But let me bring up the upper air. That'd always be interesting to take a look at and see what's happening here.
I do see Climate Prediction Center is placing us on their 3 to 4 week outlook. In fact, practically the entire country, I would say 75 to 80% of the country for the time frame. This is for June 13th to June 26th, above normal temperature probability. And we are in the equal chances in terms of precipitation, but just to our south, they have below normal precipitation. So, what I guess they're alluding to is going to be an unusually warm to maybe even a hot spell of
Ridgy,
weather.
kind of ridgy in the east.
All right, and they in fact they have um, on their 8 to 14 day uh, probabilist
Probabilistic.
probabilistic. Ah, goodness.
And
Um,
I'm the one drinking wine.
yeah, excessive heat, slight chance of excessive heat covering the nation's midsection from South Dakota through southern Minnesota, down through Iowa, Missouri, Arkansas, into parts of the Tennessee Valley for the period from the 6th to the 9th of June. So uh, the trend seems to be, as you just mentioned with a building ridge, the trend will seem to be as we move into June, progressively hotter and maybe even more humid conditions. We'll see about that.
Tropical Tidbits, your go-to source for the latest maps. That's what we use on a daily basis. And if you're into weather maps and weather models, you should use it too. And it's absolutely free. So here's your upper air. And just to give you an idea here with the flow, pretty deep upper low coming into Central California. So that puts an end to the heat there, obviously. And this is how the jet stream is working for tomorrow. You've got that's the upper trough that we're waiting to move through to bring in the cool, dry air. So our air basically coming down from Canada, and as we roll into Monday and Tuesday, that trough pulls out, and it's hard to see, but there's probably there's some kind of weak shortwave that is moving southeastward from the Great Lakes later Tuesday and Tuesday night. So we're going to be on the edge of this northwest flow, which means we are susceptible to shortwave troughs that are going to be moving along. Nothing particularly strong. So that at least gives you the idea that we could very well look at this tomorrow or Sunday and see maybe a more optimistic viewpoint of weather conditions for later in the week. And then once we get through the midweek, big ridge builds off in the southeast, and that starts to that will warm things up to an extent. The strongest part of this upper high, Joe, is across the lower Gulf states. So that's not really a way that we get hot. I mean, we will get warm, but we won't get hot out of this.
Right.
And going forward, well, I mean, you look at this, going forward is more of a ridge takes over across the southern half of the United States the week of June 8th. You start to get more of an east-west ridge across the southern part of the United States from the southwest all the way to the southeast coast. So it'll get hot in places like Kansas, Missouri, Nebraska, Iowa, and those areas. We'll probably be just kind of on the edge of that. So, and at least with this more of a west northwest flow aloft, it would be a situation where precipitation wise, it'll be drier than normal.
So we'll be, yeah, that well, I'd like to see drier than normal after, you step outside the last couple of days, it's like stepping out into a damp sponge.
Oh, it was disgusting.
Yes.
Okay, so let's go to the tropics here, and this is what the Hurricane Center is looking at. That little orange X centered at about roughly at about 25 north and about 55 or so west. And on the outlook, which was issued at 9 a.m., there'll be a new one at 9 p.m. Broad area of low pressure in the central Atlantic, several hundred miles east-southeast of Bermuda, large area of showers and storms, and gusty winds. Additional development of this system is possible, and a subtropical depression could form tonight or on Saturday as it moves generally northward. Development is not expected after that time due to unfavorable environmental conditions. All I'll say is that we just had Bertha that came out of supposedly unfavorable environmental conditions that suddenly became very favorable. So, look, in a way, I'm kind of rooting for this to develop because it'll be an ocean system. It's not going to bother anybody, but just the idea that we would have had 3 named tropical systems in the month of May is something worth noting.
And what is the sea storm?
Cristobal.
Cristobal.
Correct.
All right.
All right, so let's see if I can pull up the loop and we can take a look at this. All right, here's not a bad shot on the Caribbean loop. I can get a nice close-up. So this is what they're looking at, folks. You obviously can see the turning here that is going on. There is probably some kind of upper low where you see that hook on the western edge of the clouds. That looks like there's an upper low there, and it also looks like there's a surface circulation that's well to the east of the upper low. So the low level circulation has separated from the cold upper low. That might give this an opportunity to develop into something. It also isn't moving very much at all. It looks like it's basically stationary, so that gives it some time. And the water temperatures in that area are fairly, um, they're fairly close to tropical storm threshold, so it is doable.
I'm just looking here, trying to locate because I know Mr. Briller sent me some Jeopardy question, and it's always so difficult for me to find because sometimes on the you look back on some of these messages and they disappear, and you don't know what happened to them.
I know.
Uh, no, it wasn't a question. He was just confirming for me. Um, I said, "What about Montreal 100 1975?" And he said, August 1st, 1975, officially 99.7. Mr. Chaffee is correct. Your memory is second to none. Great job. You rock.
Nice. On the Pacific side, we've been talking about this system that the Hurricane Center rates as a 70% chance of developing. There'll be another tropical weather outlook out shortly. So we're watching that because that is going to be drifting northward. And we've been talking about the fact that, the models have been trying to create what I would just describe as a giant, a giant spiral or a gyre of moisture from this over Central America and extending up into the Gulf of Mexico. Let me bring that sector up here, and we can take a look at what's going on with the upper air, but with the surface first, and then we'll take a look at the upper air. So there we go. Now, I've jumped out way ahead here, so let me roll back. I had it on the map where the hurricane already made landfall. So let's roll again.
So what we're looking at in this case, so we have two rather interesting tropical anomalies. We have one out in the Atlantic Ocean, which could make for the unprecedented third tropical cyclone in the month of May.
Right.
There, now,
I just identified it on the map. Go ahead.
and now we're looking here at this system in the Pacific that if it gets a
Which is
name,
this one. That's what the GFS has.
right, which if it gets a name and manages to cross through Mexico and into the Gulf of Mexico, would be one of those rare storms that has two names, right?
Yes, correct.
So,
If. It's all a big if.
so
And of course, the big issue has been whether the models are correct in lifting this gyre up far enough north so that you start to get big pressure falls in the southwest Gulf or in the northwest Caribbean, and the GFS is now really kind of backed off on developing it on the Pacific side, just kind of straddles it there. Sort of looks like what the Europeans been doing with this. It still keeps pressures relatively low over Central America, but on this particular run, again, this never comes inside day 10. See, that's the real issue here. All of this could be fine and dandy, but while the models seem to have this sort of built-in error of wanting to make tropical storms in the day 10 to 16 time frame, and it never gets inside day 10. We started with this back on Monday. Okay, 5 days have gone by, and we're still outside of the day 10 time frame. That's why you can't really get too worked up when you see this stuff in the long range, because 99 times out of 100, it doesn't happen. And if you look to see with the Atlantic system, that eventually does get kicked up to the north and northeast. It gets absorbed by the cold front that is now moving offshore. So it has a limited amount of time to develop. It'll have to do it in a hurry, but we saw what happened the other night with Bertha basically forming in less than 12 hours off the South Carolina coast. So, anything is possible. I'm just rooting for the record books. And
why
as
not? Why not?
Yeah, and as far as the upper air is concerned over that part of the down in the tropics, again, you don't have, there's weak high pressure often in the Bahamas. You've got the upper low that represents the Atlantic system, and there's just sort of this giant void that goes down in the Caribbean and into the Pacific side. And in general, with higher pressures aloft gradually building across the southeast and in the Gulf states itself, that creates uh, a troughing, let's call it a troughing environment. in the from the central Gulf of Mexico down in through Central America. So that's why you have to kind of watch that area in the longer haul. But as I said, for now, it's all the daily speculation that the models do, and we're not going to get worked up about it until when it starts to show it inside the 7 day time frame. Wake me up, okay? So we'll come back full screen. Got the chat board up. Hope everybody had a great day today. In spite of the soup, I went out walking early while it was still overcast and reasonably cool out here. I did my 7 miles, so I'm like very happy. Um, anyhow,
In spite of this humidity.
yeah, it was cool enough that the humidity didn't bother me that much this morning, and I was done by a quarter of 9. I went out at 7 o'clock.
I mean, you're out in those 60 plus degree temperatures. I'm up here sweltering with temps in the 80s and dew points at 70. And
Yeah,
as you can see, when I have a bad hair day, it's a
yes,
bad hair day.
that's why I'm a minimalist. Actually,
By the way,
I went out at 6:30 this morning.
up here, we're going to go into phase 2 on June the 9th. And in fact, the hair cutting salon will be opening that day. And my wife and I have already made reservations for that day. So for the first time, by then it'll be almost 12 weeks that I've gone without a haircut. So it is very much in need of, of getting chopped a bit here.
That is probably going to be the toughest appointments to make are going to be with everybody's hair person.
Well, the thing is, we've already been given they've run through the ground rules here. When we go, one of us will have to stay in the car because only one person is allowed inside at a time. So we'll probably flip a coin to see who gets their hair cut first. And and you know, one of us will bring a book to read or something, or we'll look at our phones while the other is finally getting
Yep.
snip snip snip.
Scott Briller hit super chat tonight for cigar for me, candy cigarettes for you, and red wine for me, which I'm
Oh,
already drinking. I have
lovely.
my Merlot.
In fact, I have a box upstairs. I keep forgetting to bring it down. The candy cigarettes, which actually is not really candy. It's bubble gum, believe it
Yeah.
or not.
Well, they're illegal, so you might get arrested now that you've told the world that you've got, a candy stash in your house. Also, the chairman, Scott Briller, reminded me. I don't know how I did this, but last year he had asked me to predict how many 90-degree days would be at Central Park, and I just said 15, which turned out to be exactly correct.
Wow.
Believe it or not. So I will just attribute that to incredible forecasting skill and not from some random event. Okay. So on that same note, as far as this year is concerned, I will predict. I'm going to predict 12.
Okay.
I'm going to predict 12, and I will also predict that we won't see it. We won't see a 90 in the month of June.
That's a pretty good considering
I'm going to
the
take a shot.
considering that CPC has much of the country enveloped in above normal probability. That'll be interesting to see if that does pan
Oh,
out.
I have no. Yeah, look. I know there's no chance. There's almost no chance of the second one. If I get the first one, it's out of sheer luck. But I'm going to say 12 and no 90s in June. And Steve Lapointe, thanks for hitting super chat tonight. Coffee for Mr. Rayo and wine for Mr. Me.
Well, I don't drink coffee. We've already. I drink
Tea
tea.
for
So
Mr. Rayo.
tea for Mr. Rayo. Um, my wife just coming over the intercom monitoring upstairs.
I thought either that or it was like the megaphone at Gimbals.
Well, she could just as well yell down from upstairs down the hallway here. I could still hear her or whatever. But she said somebody wants to know, or some folks want to know about launch weather. I'm sorry to say, tomorrow for the SpaceX launch, it looks actually perhaps a bit worse than it was yesterday. Um, it looks like there's going to be a fair amount of showery and thundery conditions in the vicinity of Cape Canaveral. And in fact, I saw something that said that they now are only giving like a 20% chance of a launch tomorrow. If they don't launch tomorrow, they'll try again on Sunday at 3 o'clock. But Joe, one of the problems of launching at this time of the year, June, July, August, is if you have a launch from Cape Canaveral in the afternoon, you're up against the wall because almost every day there's going to be a problem with cumulus clouds and showers and storms. Remember that on July 16th, 1969, when we went to the moon with Apollo 11, that launch came at 9:31 in the morning. And most of the thunderstorms don't wake up at 9:31 in the
Yeah,
morning.
I just brought up the Nam 3, and it's a little those little there's all these specks in East Central Florida.
Right.
So maybe none of them sitting on the coast, but inland certainly. So you're right. It's kind of tough to do it in late in the day. Is there a particular reason why they're doing it that late and not doing it early, or is
They're
it
doing it
just?
because they need to get the Dragon space capsule, which will be carrying the first two astronauts lifting off into space from American soil. That has to be launched at the exact time when the International Space Station, to get into the orbital plane of the International Space Station, the space station itself will be passing Florida on a northeast trajectory just minutes before the launch, but they have to get everything just right. If they launch too early or if they launch too late, then they won't be able to rendezvous or catch up with the space station, which is the main reason why they're launching. So it's a function more of the positioning of the space station relative to the Florida Peninsula, and that's why, unfortunately, in this go around, it's happening at a time when convective activity is quite active. So who's to
Dan,
say? They'll try
Daniel
tomorrow. If they don't, they'll try on Sunday.
Daniel Fitzsimmons wants to know if Death Valley has a weather station. I believe it does. I don't know if it's manned. Maybe it's one of those ASOS, the automated stations that they have out there. I'd hate to think that there's somebody actually having to show up for work when it's 120.
I
That can't be fun.
No, no.
Um,
Now, here's another question. President Trump was at Cape Canaveral for the postponed launch. Says he's coming back on Saturday. If he comes back on Saturday and it's postponed, it's going to be rescheduled for the next day. Does he stay in Florida, or does he fly back to Washington and come back again on
well,
Sunday?
I don't book his days, so I have no idea. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. I have no
You can
clue.
always fly. You can always fly to Mar-a-Lago and then come back on Sunday if it's postponed tomorrow, I guess.
Oh yeah, I mean they basically when it's time to go someplace they just like pop up on a plane and they go. I mean it's not like they have to run like you and I when we have to go to take a flight and you got to be there hours beforehand and all the rest of it. They just turn the ignitions and just start and warm up the jet and they just go and then they floor it while they're up in the air.
1981, when they had the second launch of the space shuttle, not the first, but the second, I flew down there. I had press credentials. The launch was postponed at T minus 31 seconds. I
Oh
got back on
God.
the plane. I got back on the plane, flew back, and I came back the following week. It was no big problem for my budget because if you remember, in those days, we had People's Express Airlines
Oh yeah, I remember people's.
flying
I think I
flying
flew
out
them
flying out
once.
of flying out of Newark Airport, and it was costing like $40 or $50 a flight. I mean, try that today. It just won't work. But back then, it wasn't a big deal. It was just like all right,
It
well,
was like taking a bus.
yeah, exactly. And it was so funny when they would collect the money on board. So you see a stewardess or a flight attendant. I want to be proper here, going up the aisle with a cash register on a rolling on a rolling desk, and that's how you paid for the flight. It was amazing.
All right,
And
so here is tonight's Briller Jeopardy from the category of TV shows. How old was Herman Munster?
oh 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 well, let's see, Lily. Uh uh, I'm going to have to say I do a very poor Herman Munster. I'll say 39.
$1.50.
A bu-
He was
100,
150.
oh, he's 150. All right, I get it.
Uh,
Now,
uh,
that would probably make Grandpa what, 450 years old, or
the Munsters, the show was so popular in 1964, they were invited to participate in what?
um, they were invited to come to the White House to help the president pardon a turkey. I don't.
No, they were in. Well, you got the turkey part was close, Joe. They were invited. They were invited to participate in the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade.
How do you like that? Yeah, that's special. But they didn't come up with a balloon in the shape of Herman Munster. That would have been much too tall and much too
Yeah.
difficult to handle, probably.
And what was Fred Flintstone's favorite drink?
Um, well, I I could say Cactus Cola.
That's what it is. Cactus Cooler is right.
I've got a bunch of that in the refrigerator.
Oh God.
And then he thought that Barney had drunk the last bottle of Cactus Cooler, ran over to Barney's house, grabbed the bottle which he thought was the last bottle of Cactus Cooler, and chucked it down and told Barney he was never going to speak to him again. And Barney said, "Can I ask you a question, Fred?" And Fred
Can
said,
I ask you a question, Fred?
"Can I ask you a question, Fred?" He said, "Well, you better make it a good one because it's the last one I'm going to answer." "Okay, Fred. Why did you drink my car polish?"
Yes,
To which Fred
exactly.
says, "Car polish? Barney, do something." And Barney said, "I'll get a chamois."
You don't have. By the way, you know turtle wax. You don't hear any thunder out your way?
It would.
Ask Mrs. Rayo to go out there and see if there are any lightning bolts flying around.
Uh,
No, 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 don't ask her that.
no,
No,
don't ask her that.
no.
If if
Shit.
if you, if she does that and she gets hit, then
Oh,
who's going to make lunch for me
then
tomorrow?
you'll never hear the end of it if she did. All right, folks.
I'll go
Well,
out. I'll go upstairs and say, "Now who's gonna make me lunch now?" And she's lying
exactly.
there.
All right, so there's no Sunday show because I am taking the weekend off. I'm going to go up to Connecticut for a couple of days.
Yes,
So there'll be a few weather updates at the usual spots on the website, on the weather app, and on Patreon, on my weather platform on Patreon. But no Sunday morning show. There's not going to be that much going on anyway, so why not?
easy,
We'll take a
easy money
weekend off.
weather.
What's that?
Easy money weather.
Well, this is a tough, Joe. This is for me mentally. This is a
Yes,
very. The spring is always a tough time for me. Aside from the fact that the winter, which from a professional standpoint, an active winter is something that I revel in because I love to forecast it. I don't necessarily, may not necessarily like the outcome, but I do love the challenge of forecasting for those months, December through March, and
right.
even into early April. But
And sometimes this year, early May.
yes, now in the spring, I'm mentally fried for all the stuff that I wind up doing during the winter months. So it's kind of a time where I take a step back. So
Right.
it's a little harder for me to get motivated to do things on a regular day-to-day basis, as opposed to when we get into the winter season or during the heart of hurricane season when things are really revving up. So this is a nice time for to be able to just sort of step away, so that when we're dealing with storms and doing 2 live shows a day, we'll make up for the time off that we're taking now.
I'm just looking at Steve LaPont saying Joe Rayo can do his own show, but open room an hour before doing it.
Right,
Well,
just when I set up the live show on YouTube, I usually set the
right,
show up about an hour. I schedule it an hour before
right.
on the live stream, and then the chat room opens up so people can jump on board and they start talking. And of course,
Right.
you could join on Discord, folks. There's a link on Discord. Let me just put it up. Uh, where is it? Let's try this. I
And
always
by the way,
have
when you visit your daughter tomorrow, you're going to
I
be
always have trouble
taking.
trying to find the invite link, but this is the channel link, so I put it there on the chat. If you're not part of the Discord, join it. A lot of a lot of you folks that are on the chat board are already on Discord, which is basically a nonstop chat room that goes 24/7. So you'll be able to enjoy it.
I was just
Uh
going to say, so you're going to, what happened?
oh. I disappeared.
We had thunder already. We had 0.26 inches.
We've had thunder and 0.26 inches, according to Mrs. Rayo.
Okay,
You're in the dark.
and according to me, I'm using Zoom video. I just lost. Let's see if I can bring it back. Okay. Oh, there we go. I don't know what had Zoom video is great, but every so often, weird things happen. Double audio in my ear. Just lost the shot, but we just got it back. We're in the process of saying goodbye, Mr. Rayo. But I was just saying, I put the Discord chat up there. Timothy Veltman just put it up as well. It's free. Join it. It's a nonstop chat room. Runs 24/7. So you guys can just continue to talk whenever you want. I jump in there from time to time. Mr. Rayo has the link too, but we never see him. But you never know. He may surprise one day.
One day, yes.
One
You're
day.
going to visit your daughter. So you're going to take the Port Jeff ferry tomorrow?
I'll be on the 9 o'clock boat or the 10:30 boat. I haven't decided yet.
Every time I go on a ferry, be it the Port Jeff or the Staten Island ferry, I always have the same visual. This goes back when I was a very young boy. The movie The Giant Behemoth.
Oh, good Lord.
People are on a ferry in England, and all of a sudden this monster just emerges out of the water, spins the boat around, tilts it over or whatever. I always think about that. So maybe tomorrow, as you're on the ferry,
A gigantic Queen Victoria.
Right, exactly.
No. The Port Jeff ferry is actually, it's both cars and passengers.
Right.
Port Jeff
Right.
ferry is it's a nice flat ride across the Sound. It really is. It really goes. It's an hour and 15 minutes, and it's a whole lot better than. It doesn't save me any time. If I drove, I would probably get to my daughter's at the same time in northern Connecticut as I would taking the boat. But I don't have to drive. The Port Jeff ferry is I can't quite walk to it. I can walk to it because it's about 7 miles from here. So I wanted to do my walk to the ferry. I could do that. And then on the other side, my daughter's going to pick me up. So I don't have to do any driving. It is a nice boat ride in between. It's easy.
Okay. Well, I hope you enjoy your weekend with your daughter.
I will do that, and
overnight.
you have a great weekend, and we'll be back on Monday.
Yes, sir.
And thanks again for Steve and for Scott hitting super chat tonight. Steve Lapointe, Scott Briller, thank you both. Joe and I really appreciate it, and thanks everybody for being here. Stay safe with whatever thunderstorm